Hey, everyone.
I was going to say that it's really dark. And then I just turned my head, and so it was completely pitch black outside of the windows. It's dark. I mean, it's winter.
It was late when I sat down. Terrible. It's only 4 o'clock. Awesome. So, John Scarbeck, you have the first demo item. I can't tell us if he's here, partially here. So is this photo of Scarbeck? Is he in a swimming pool? Is he like lying on the bottom of a swimming pool, do you think?
I always wondered, yeah.
Here he is.
Sorry, I'm late. Supply chain.
No problem at all. So, welcome everyone. This is 1st of December Kubernetes demo. So, Scarbeck, you have the first demo item.
I do, but like I didn't prepare, so I'm like not prepared.
It's the best demo. It's just freestyle.
Ugh, you're making me work hard. Okay, so I just wanted to prove to you that Pages actually works in the Canary environment. So if I go and share my screen and move that out of my way, we can see the Canary stage in production. We're looking at web pages is receiving traffic, although a very tiny amount. In this case, 10 requests per second, so very little. The load balancer dashboards, I do not believe work because there's no such thing as a stage in the realm of HA proxy for these particular charts. I think they are built differently for the rest of our services. We are, bouncing up and out of our aptX and error ratios, but we're not causing alerts. I'm hoping when we put more traffic, we'll be okay. So like if I zoom into yesterday, which is when we were first running with traffic, I didn't zoom in far enough. We were seeing more traffic in Canary because of the way that my procedure worked. I've ramped up the wait just to see some traffic flow through, watched everything for 10 minutes, and then I turned the wait down to what is going to be the default in the future after the virtual machines get removed. So it was just temporarily taking more traffic. But during that period of time, like when we were seeing just shy of 100 requests per second, like everything was kind of flat inside of our ratio, aptX and error ratios. So I'm thinking we just need a little bit more traffic. Maybe we see so little traffic, the Golang process is like kind of spinning down, its memory is being freed up, so that it needs to go out and request new data or something. That's only a hypothesis at this moment. But beyond that, like the one problems that we had during one of our initial implementations was that the main stage error rate skyrocketed. If it would load, I could prove to you that we resolved that situation. It was this chart down here, just like, or excuse, this chart here just skyrocketed during the last attempt at implementing the Canary stage. So that's good. So we're good on this front. And then I wanted to showcase a little bit on the pod metrics. So if I go back to yesterday again, we'll see that CPU usage. Right now it's very low because we get a whopping 10 requests per second. But yesterday, we were hovering around 500 millicores. So like, we're serving traffic. We're doing good, right? And lastly, I want to quickly, but Amy rushed me, add split on stage, go. Oh, size. I don't care. Go. So we could see that we do get requests. So for this bucket of 30 seconds, we saw 380 requests to the Canary stage. while we're still serving a whopping 40,000 requests per 30 seconds on the main stage. So that's where we are with Canary and GitLab Pages. Jarv found an issue with my production change request, so I'm going through that, and maybe later today we could start rolling the rest of Pages for the main stage.
Jarv is just coming back and is making issues, right? I can't believe it. Just the first day.
I like it. So that's what I've got.
Awesome. Looking good. Looking good. What is the how easy was it to get the Canary running on Pages? Or the other way around, Pages running on a Canary?
It wasn't difficult because we already had our HA proxy cookbook set up to be able to accept Canary. It's just some minor tweaks we had to do specific to GitLab Pages because ports and such did not line up between our Omnibus installs and Kubernetes installs, which is fine. We could work through it. It just made the implementation a little bit more difficult, but like the fact that HA proxy already supported this made it tremendously easy. It was just a matter of creating the stage and then sending traffic to it, which wasn't bad at all. I think if we were starting with Canary from scratch, it would have been a completely different story. So yeah, it wasn't terrible at all. I don't know, like services like the soon to be renamed Kubernetes agent, for example, I think will be a little bit more difficult because of the way it operates. But I'm not entirely sure. So yeah.
I have a question, Scarbuck. So which route did we end up implementing here? So we're doing HTTPS termination over HTTPS termination, and we are just doing a tiny fraction of our own, the regular domain, the gitlab.io.
Yeah, there's no routing based on domain. It's just strictly traffic and percentage weights going to Canary. So we don't care who hits it. There's nothing inside of QA that says, hey, please direct me to a Canary instance for Canary testing. Nothing like that exists right now. If we do want that, we need a new issue to create it and get that sorted out because I don't know how to do it quickly. And that is probably something we want to explore. We may want like a test project for that specific thing, which makes QA very, very specific to .com in the Canary stage, which may not be wise. But that is kind of, that's where we're staying right now. Like no testing exists, it's just the Canary stage exists. I figure that's better than nothing. And it's a good start towards iterating towards a better Pages test model.
Yeah, sure. Now, just to double check. So we do have a HTTPS load balancer that is routing to an HTTPS endpoint, which is provided by Pages. We're not doing TCP balancing here.
For HTTPS, we are doing TCP load balancing.
Okay,
and
we're
it's
doing
just
TCP.
moving connections by weight. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
HA proxy can't do the SSL stuff because our certificates are locked inside of our application.
And how do we make sure, are we doing SNI inspection? How do we make sure that we are only doing this for our own domain, or we do this regardless of the domain
Regardless.
name? Okay,
like,
so
like
even personal domains can be routed. Okay, thank you.
Precisely, yeah.
Awesome. And do you have a rough idea of like what's your kind of pace of rollout over production that you're roughly hoping for?
I want to target today, but I think depending on release management work will slow me down, and I still need to improve my procedure, which I'm working on now. So if I can't get it today, hopefully tomorrow. So next week we'll come back and I'll probably get it done next week, because that's how timelines work in my brain, and apparently
a week is super fast, right? Like you've definitely got release management stuff that's higher priority. So yeah, that's totally fine. Awesome, great progress.
And I guess the last thing I should mention is that we do still have the final piece of work where we needed to implement rate limiting inside of Pages. We're still waiting on improvement to our Helm chart to land. I've got a merge request, it's in review. It's been kind of going back and forth a little bit because of the disconnect between how Pages gets configured and the way the distribution team has like wired things together. No fault of anyone. It's just, conversation has kind of drifted a little bit, which is fine. So, but once that gets in place, we could start shifting or we could upgrade our Helm chart and be able to support that feature set of GitLab Pages. So that'll be exciting too, especially for some domains that like to hit us kind of hard.
Awesome. Great. Is there any other questions, comments around Pages? No. So Ahmad, over to you.
So GitLab Shell. Let me share my screen. I hope you guys can see it. And actually describe pod GitLab Shell. So this is the pod. I think we merged it yesterday, so it's deployed and it's running GitLab Shell as deployment here. The container is GitLab Shell, and let's see actually something interesting. As Scarback told me, basically, we can get the logs, and I can basically actually make it like so, and get clone. This is on the pre environment, basically the pre-production, and I created already the project there. So when I'm trying to clone it, it should be here somewhere, hopefully.
And keep in mind we've got 2 pods running, so your traffic might
Yeah,
get
that's
routed to
true.
a different one.
Yeah. Maybe it's this one. Yeah. It's here. So I think it's running. One other thing actually we did, I enabled the metrics, and for this it's gonna be like we don't consume it yet on Prometheus, but if I hit here if I forward the port and get the metrics, it's already there because it's enabled. Ta-da. So I think what comes next is consuming this on Prometheus, and yeah, maybe, I don't know, like when we push this to production, actually, I don't know the roadmap for this, but yeah. Any questions?
Nice. I'm super impressed, and great to see a first demo that on and a really good demo as well.
First one's up. Thank you.
For the source, are we planning to hand this over to source code and ask them to test stuff, or is it something we can fully verify on our side?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, maybe Scarback could answer this.
Yeah, so my expectation at this point is we've done the work for pre-prod, so I see 2 things that we kind of need, because we don't know the answer to these questions unless we want to try to tackle this work and do it ourselves. But one, we need to know how to configure the performance, or not performance. We need to know how to configure the resources we need for this new service. This isn't OpenSSH. This is something that we've created. We don't know how well this will perform under load. Now that we have it in pre-prod, the source code team has an instance they could test against to help us or guide us towards achieving the whatever numbers we need to fine tune those values. The other thing we need, Ahmad's going to work on getting metrics going. It sounds like we just need the necessary dashboards and charts and all that good stuff. But I would want to lean on someone else to create those because they know what metrics are important to them and they know what metrics we need to monitor. We can copy and paste from our existing dashboards, but I think it'd be more useful if source code would be at least willing to look at that work. But
Yeah, I agree.
That was super helpful when the package team was working on their own
Yeah.
dashboards, because they learned how it
Precisely.
works. And it isn't easy to figure this out, to be honest. But once they did, they created exactly what they wanted to, and there was not much back and forth between us. So
Yeah,
it's
agree. And
preferable, I think. Yeah.
as we've gone through, they're sort of constantly seeing improvements or new information, and now they know what to do. So yeah, they're quite self-serve, which is great.
So from my viewpoint, I think the next thing we could probably, let's get metrics going, and let's get the metrics available inside of Prometheus and Thanos and such. And then we could probably start working on staging. Because unless there's something fun happening, I don't see anything that would hold us up from moving forward to staging. The readiness review is still open. And I think the performance stuff like load testing is still an open thread. Last time I looked at it, I think that was the last thread that was still open. And then after all of that is done, we could start production.
Awesome. Sounds good. Great stuff.
So it's not a lot of work. It's just coordination between other people that I think will be the most time consuming portion at this point.
Nice. Wow. Awesome. Great progress. Any other stuff on GitLab SSHD before we move on? Yeah. Okay. So Sean, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. This is just a follow-up to a Slack conversation I was having with Skarbek and some other people. So we are looking at, I say we, as in both delivery and scalability, are looking at putting Redis into Kubernetes. And I was trying to do some performance testing, comparing VMs to Kubernetes. So Igor had already set up a Kubernetes cluster. I set up some VMs. The idea is that the Helm chart automatically provides Sentinel for you to match what we have in production, set that up on the VMs. I made a few mistakes, which I've been fixing on the VMs, but on the Kubernetes side, I'm not 100% sure how this is going to work, because for Redis Sentinel, the clients need to be able to reach each Sentinel node. So you can't have, you can't just say, this is the one external address for these three Redis nodes. You need to say, this is the address of this Redis node, this is the address of this Redis node, and this is the address of this Redis node. So I'll just share a terminal to start with. So I've got, this is using the load balancer service for the Sentinel. So I've got a single external IP that I can connect to, which I've done over here. First of all, I connected to the wrong thingy. And if I ask first of all, I can only connect to one, so that's already not going to work because I need to be able to connect to all three. If I do this, we can see that we should have three. Oh, well, apparently this one's failing for some reason, whatever. And this is using a load balancer, but that's not going to work because A, I need to be able to connect to all three, and B, when I ask it what the address of the primary is, it gives me an internal address that's only routable inside the cluster. But we need external clients, I think, for at least two reasons. Three reasons. One is that during the migration, we need to be able to talk from VMs to Kubernetes and vice versa. Two is that our console nodes are still on VMs and they need to connect to Redis, and that should probably use Sentinel because otherwise we'll get weird failures when we do things like imports. And three, I'm not so sure on this one, but don't we already have multiple Kubernetes clusters for our Rails deployment in production, in which case we need to talk across clusters anyway. So basically, that's me saying, I think we need this. I don't know how. So there's, I think Skarbek's seen it. There's quite a long issue on the, I'll put it in the in the doc. There's quite a long issue in PR about some of this stuff in the charts upstream repo. So that's the PR. So it says that you can use node port to access externally. And I think what that's doing is letting you, the second thing I showed with the Redis client, like that would give you something that's externally routable when you ask Redis what the Sentinel is, but I don't know how to make this externally routable yet. There's a workaround issue linked which uses HA proxy. Igor was also suggesting we just have, instead of a single service with 3 pods, so we want 3 nodes in our Sentinel, 3 Redis nodes. Instead of a single service with 3 pods, we have 3 services, and then we can expose each of those services externally, using load balancer, using whatever, that's fine. What else? The chart itself lets you expose primary and secondary, or with a service type, but again, that doesn't work because we need both secondaries, not just one for both. I don't even know what that means, really.
And if I recall, that exposure only worked if we were not using Sentinel, but since we want to use Sentinel, we lose all those services.
I haven't been trying these things without Sentinel. That's a good point. Yeah, because we want Sentinel, I haven't been trying these without. So it's possible that those don't even make sense with Sentinel. Yeah.
Why are we attempting to migrate this specific workload to Kubernetes? So what's the reason why we can't run this in VM and we had to run it on Kubernetes? Valerio coming to collect a toy here that just left me. So I don't know. Did you get my question?
Yeah, no, I do. I don't know who's the best. I mean, I guess Amy maybe is the best person to answer that.
I think Igor was saying something to this. Sorry, Amy. Didn't want to
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think one of the reasons is that we will probably come up with a lot of more Redis clusters, and manually maintaining different VM clusters for Redis is a lot of pain and a lot of manual work. And if we have a way to automate this, that would be preferable. And Kubernetes is one way to, manage workloads and clusters with a common tool set. So I think that was one of the motivations behind that.
But so when we say maintaining, are we talking about just installing regular software updates? What are we talking about? I mean, what's the, do we want to scale stuff?
Instances, so additional Redis instances. So we have 6 at the moment, and they're all different, I believe. So the sort of thinking is that at least trying to make some of these consistent on Kubernetes will make it easier to operate them. And then the next time we add one, we kind of have a model. Yeah,
but the design of Sentinel seems to clash with how Kubernetes behave, because we want to basically, it's designed to, it's something like that you connect to a node and just pins you out the IP address of all the other nodes, and you have supposed to have direct connectivity with all of them. And Kubernetes is all about, if it's inside, you can get whatever you want. If you are from the outside, this is another land, so you have to expose stuff. So we're just making things harder. So my question here is more about, do we really need the orchestration that Kubernetes is giving us here, or will just a Terraform well-made module and VMs deployed in the proper VPC do what we need? Because I mean, when you do something like this, even if you think about from more of a general platform as a service, this is the type of service that you buy directly from the platform provider, and then you connect to it. And it's not something that you, I mean, you can still host it, but the point is that, I mean, it doesn't, at least this chart doesn't look like is designed to serve the type of workload that we have. And generally speaking, about the details of the protocol itself, it seems really hard to make something like this. So I'm just questioning,
it's a great question.
What are the benefits compared to all the things that we have to rewire and figure out for going down this route?
It's definitely a great question. So I am trying to dig out some of the issues. So I know we spent some time looking through the kind of options. The big ones are like standardizing and having the kind of ability to easily spin up new Redis instances. That was, as I understood it, that was kind of the main benefit.
I think another benefit, but I'm not sure if this is actually a benefit now I look at the charts again. So we were also considering using Redis cluster in some places, and we figured if we move to Redis in Kubernetes, that's going to be easier to do. So Redis cluster as opposed to a Kubernetes cluster, overloaded term.
Yeah.
That also needs the clients to know the addresses of all the servers. There is a chart for that, but it's not the same chart that supports Sentinel. So I don't know how, using the Bitnami charts, we would have Sentinel and cluster at the same time.
What's the difference between Sentinel and cluster?
So Sentinel is you have a single primary, and you can fail over to a secondary and have a different primary. Cluster is sharding essentially. So you have multiple.
Understood. Okay.
The client says, okay, well, this key will be on this Redis. This key will be on this Redis.
Is there a way to run Redis without Sentinel besides using cluster?
Yeah, you can just run plain Redis, but I don't think we want to go from using Sentinel to not using Sentinel in production.
I mean, Sentinel is basically doing that what Kubernetes normally would do for a service, right?
Yes.
So if you would set up the health and readiness checks in the right way, maybe you would reach the same what Sentinel is doing. Just I'm not sure about this, but I would assume that this is the idea, to come up with a chart or an operator for Redis and Kubernetes, right?
Yeah, I don't know which is more boring there, because you can either say that using plain Redis in Kubernetes is boring because then you use Kubernetes' features to automatically figure out, you can only access the primary at any one point because Kubernetes will just tell you where the primary, just connect you to the primary.
Yeah, but when you reach out for support, probably there is more support around Sentinel, which is designed to do
exactly
this instead
and
of just doing yourself.
Sentinel is baked into Redis itself, so I'm going to assume that has like maybe some specific things that would not be replicated in Kubernetes, and those cases wouldn't work well. But I don't know. I was trying to run some performance tests. That's what I was trying to do when I started this.
What I meant is that, to me, this sounds more like you want to have dedicated clusters that only runs your Redis instances. And then there you define the expectation from the outside in terms of every node. So you're not really thinking about scaling pods, but you're more thinking about, if something happens to my pods, Kubernetes will just recycle it and give me a new one. But so let's say you want to have 5 nodes in terms of Sentinel thing, then this means that you define that you want to expose 5 Redis nodes out of it, so they have the routable address, and basically you never reach to them inside the cluster. You only operate through the cluster service definition or load balancer, so that in the end you end up with the same result. I'm not sure about how much complexity this adds and what you gain from this compared to running straight on VM. Maybe you standardize on the common tool set.
Yeah, sorry, I did ask Igor about this as well, because Igor mentioned in the Slack thread that that's probably, that seems like a thing that we'll have to do is create a service per Redis node, not a service per Redis functional Redis. So for instance, for the cache Redis at the moment, we have 3 VMs. That would be 3 services in Kubernetes, not one service with 3 pods. I think that possibly is the way we'll have to go, which might mean we lose some of the benefits of the chart, which will, handle that for us. But it doesn't matter if the chart handles that for us if we can't actually connect to it from outside the cluster. So yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, I'll speak to Igor again tomorrow and see where we want to take this, because, I mean, this is the kind of thing, obviously I know how to do stuff with VMs better than I know how to do stuff with Kubernetes anyway, but it definitely feels easier on VMs because each one is its own thing in the first place that, can be routable or not.
What's the best issue? Where are you going to be discussing this, Sean? Because what might be worth us doing is, there is this Redis scaling strategy doc, which was the kind of the deep dive into how to scale Redis, and the conclusion from that was to go to Kubernetes. So it would probably be worth us all having another read through 557 and checking that covers everything, or at least that we bring that into the discussion.
Yeah, so the epic Igor and I are working on is one I will put in the doc when I find the doc. So that's the higher level epic, and then this is the one that we're currently working on. So I think it could go in either, to be honest, because this is sort of come out of what we're specifically doing in this epic, but it would apply to all of the stuff from the parent, because we need to we're using Sentinel on every functional Redis that we have at the moment. So if we want to keep that, we need to figure out what we're doing and do the same thing on all of them. Okay, because I know some are planned to go to cluster, right? Redis cluster. And yes. This was there. So, which I have an additional question about now. I've been looking at the chat. So okay, yeah, because I think there's definitely a big are we doing things in the right order? Like, does it make sense? Like other sort of instances that make more sense. But I think it might be worth us. It'd certainly be interesting to look at the strategy, the sort of scaling strategy doc, and what are the other things we considered, and actually based on now what we know. Are any of those looking like stronger options, or are we kind of back to zero? Yeah, I mean, the thing with scaling Redis as well is we kind of have to go horizontally, because we're already using the most powerful VM node type that we can. Right. So in Kubernetes, the point of me doing this performance test is just to make sure that we don't suddenly lose 25% off that, which would be bad. But if it's close enough, then that's probably fine. But we can't really go up vertically, so we have to slice horizontally, which okay. And we should definitely expect there will be more Redises. So whatever we're kind of looking at, what's going to be easy to add new Redises in the future and scale there as well. Yeah, I think functional partitioning does have diminishing returns, at which point we would like to go to Redis cluster as well, because for the cache, say, going Redis cluster, could potentially make a lot of sense and basically mean that we never have to think about the cache, never have to split anything out of the cache manually, because that's what Redis cluster does. We don't need to partition manually; it will partition automatically. But I'll add something to one of those epics and pop it in the delivery channel once I've done that tomorrow, because I don't know. I don't know enough about Kubernetes to know how to fix this stuff. Yeah, that makes sense. Is there a reason? So if I can't remember the detail, but I seem to remember the answer is yes. But is there a reason we wouldn't want all of these Redis instances to be Redis clusters? Some of them we wouldn't want to do that too, right? So in Redis cluster, the big constraint is that Redis itself decides what nodes a key lives on, and you cannot do a multi-key operation that affects keys on multiple nodes. So anything we have that does multi-key operations that can't match that, we can't put on Redis cluster. So realistically, we know for sure that's Sidekick. We can't do that because that will do multi-key operations that wouldn't be compatible. We don't know for the others. We've got some code that will fail in tests Ruby tests if it tries to add some new code that does that, but there's a bunch of existing cases that are already LL listed. I think at the time we did figure out that it was easier to go, if we were going to do Redis cluster and Kubernetes eventually, it was easier / simpler to do Kubernetes than cluster, but that might not be the case.
It's easy to configure, just difficult to connect to it, it sounds like. That's a hurdle, is how do we connect with this thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like setting it up like is a breeze. Like this values.yaml file is let me see, 37 lines long. That's fine. Like that's not a problem. The problem is like, how do I actually talk to this thing? So yeah, thanks everyone. It's good to know there wasn't something obvious I was missing, but I'm kind of sad there wasn't something obvious I was missing.
Yes. So what do we got next steps then for unblocking this, right? So are there things we can test out to try and get connection, or do we need to discuss more about like Kubernetes or this particular Redis instance, or what do we want to take as next steps?
I'm going to chat to Igor tomorrow, and we will update, I guess, Epic 619 with where we are, like where we're thinking. Because I think, we need to figure out at what point we just hand this over to delivery and say, can you people figure it out, please? Yeah, I think we definitely want to try service per, like, 3 separate services and see where we get with that. Yeah, I'll post in there, and then I'll pop it in the delivery channel as well once we've had a chat tomorrow.
Makes sense. What's the downside of running the 3 separate services?
The problems that I see off the bat are when you query Sentinel, it doesn't know anything about these services. So the FQDN that Sentinel currently gives us doesn't point to the IP address of the service. It points to the IP address of the pod within the cluster DNS system. If we do a multi-service configuration, I don't know if that induces any additional load on Kubernetes, because it's trying to manage the underlying pod and making sure they're wired together at all times. So if like a Redis probe fails, when a Redis node fails for whatever reason, there might be some ship and stuff like that. And because we're still relying on Sentinel, theoretically, the election of a new member will happen quickly, but I don't know if anything needs to happen with the service object inside of Kubernetes. I suspect not, and our application will handle that like it's supposed to. But it does signal a flag that of something we should look into at least. So those are the 2 problems that I initially see.
Yeah. So
sorry.
So go on.
I would say I think it also had some an extra layer of complexity, because if you had just VMs, let's say, then you have this leader election and failure detection, which happens at Sentinel level. But all of a sudden, now you're doing this over on an IP that is just a service. So there's a Kubernetes layer behind this that may detect a failure and just swap a pod. So you think that you are speaking with the same thing that was running before, but there is a new abstraction layer that may swap the pod and just give you the same IP address. And yeah, so you don't really know when something starts changing, where it's changing.
Yes, and the underlying stateful storage as well. I think in both cases that should, if a pod goes down, it should reconnect to the same stateful storage with the same external address. But that's definitely a thing we need, because otherwise we'll end up in all kinds of trouble. So yeah, I'll talk to Igor and we'll see. We'll try and just lay out where we are, because I think there's a few considerations here.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, thanks for doing that. And I recommend, like, everyone else who's on this call, have a read through the Redis scaling strategy. And then let's join in that conversation on 619 and figure out some next steps.
Cool. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming along. A hot discussion topic there. So it's good, certainly good to hear these things. Brilliant. Is there anything else anyone wants to question, discuss, or comment on? Okay, in which case, I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much for the demos and discussions, and speak to you all soon. Take care.